So this is AIKODE, an action RPG with hack and slash and life sim elements, being developed by Ace. AIKODE was a game I was waiting to play for some time as I've been following it for a while. But guess what? I got to play it, and I got some opinions about the demo, so let's get into it. Oh, and thanks Ace for letting me play. I gotta say, places like Twitter and YouTube do not do AIKODE justice in the way it looks, because the presentation of this game is simply breathtaking. The graphics and general aesthetic of AIKODE is a quality I cannot knock on. I explored what I could in the demo, and normally I'm quick to hunt down the first monster to beat down. But instead, I sat here listening to a conversation from two random NPCs.
And, how's that new job at the Clockwork Factory going?
Oh, you know, it's a paycheck, but it's repetitive. Feels like I'm just another gear in the machine. Quite literally.
Not to mention, these two NPCs have a completely different conversation at night.
You won't believe what I stumbled upon near the clock tower last night.
Again? Seriously, your talent for stumbling upon hidden gems is uncanny.
The demo also had a guitar that you could play, and I'm sure a lot of people would enjoy messing with this thing. I know I did. The different areas I got to experience were stunning. Man, I loved it. The voice acting was fine too.
Do you ever feel like there's a destiny? A bigger purpose pushing us towards an end? Even the beginning feels scripted. As you watch fate shuffle those tarot cards, deciding your future, is that what you truly want?
And not once was I completely turned off from it. The animations of this game were fluid too. I will say her clothes were going all over the place. However, rumor has it that the AIKODE is located on the butt. But I wouldn't know. And I got to say, the music was phenomenal. No other words can describe it. I would say the worst offense this game commits is having a UI with the HP looking kinda bland when everything else looks so gorgeous. Really, all I can say is keep up the great work, because this aspect of the game was near perfect for me. For the story of AIKODE, there wasn't much for me to say, as the demo was only 30 minutes to 40. I like the concept of having to get out of an endless loop and having to fight whoever gets in my way of doing so. From what was shown in the demo, my only issue was that it was wordy. As a fan of subtlety, I believe more can be said with fewer words, but I have no idea if the game will be like this the whole time, so I will leave it at that. Now, about the combat of AIKODE. Let me explain how it works before I get into anything else. You have two types of attacks, single target and AoE. In the boss fight specifically, you will have a sword and a scythe. I was also given this in training mode too. When you hold the AoE attack, you can do a launcher, so you can proceed with aerial attacks. While in the air, if you hold that button again, you will slam the enemy down. For defense, you'll be able to dodge, and if you dodge correctly, you will do a perfect dodge. You are automatically locked onto the enemy at all times, but you do have the ability to switch targets. When experiencing this combat the first time, I had to change my expectations, because initially I was kinda let down. But I had to remember not every game had to have a intricate combo system. Yet I still found myself asking, is this it? When I was fighting regular enemies, there was only one type of enemy, and they were really easy to manage. On the other hand, we have the boss fight, which works differently, and I loved it on the first go, as it was a beautiful spectacle. The musical timing of everything made it so special. having to listen to the audio cues to dodge moves made it that much more exciting. The only thing I had to figure out was what type of attack was the boss gonna do. And once I figured out everything, the no-hit run was something I needed to do. But in doing so, that's where I became more critical on the combat. Through my attempts on this no-hit run, I noticed the sword was objectively better in every way. Both the sword and the scythe do the same damage, but the sword has faster animations. I understand that the scythe has to be slower because it's an AoE weapon, but does it really have to be weaker? It felt off to me. Maybe the sword would be more intended for the 1v1 fights, but leaving the scythe completely useless would make that a bit weird to me. Making the scythe a bit stronger could be an easy solution, as that would balance out the slower animations. However, since you're trying to make this game an action RPG, I assume you're gonna have other weapons that we can use along with effects that we can put on those weapons. So while thinking about that, I figured instead of learning how to do a long combo, trying to memorize the inputs, I could see the player use an effect where they can inflict a poison that stacks up to 5, and then using the scythe, you would pop those stacks, dealing bonus damage to the enemy. You wouldn't necessarily have to do something like that, but that's just me throwing ideas out there. I'm sure you have other things in store for the player later in the game, because this was, again, only the first 30 to 40 minutes. I also want to talk about the boss setup for a little bit too. As I mentioned on my first experience with this boss, I had a great time and I love the music that plays. However, if you're trying to be optimal, at any point, you will notice that the boss is immune to damage. And experiencing this the first time, I was very annoyed because I had to wait for the next phase. So I figured it would be cool to have a feature where you could skip the rest of the phase to move on to the next. When you get to a certain percentage where the next phase begins, you can push the player back, glitch out the screen along with the music, and transition into the next phase. Thematically, I feel like that would make sense if it were to be there, as this is a computer simulation. Otherwise, I enjoyed the scenario enough to keep going to win. I will say, the AIKODE demo was short, but it was fun. The game looks and sounds wonderful. I only wanted there to be more meat in the combat, and with the demo being so short, it was hard to judge whether or not it was going to be going in that direction. What I said was only to help you out. I'm just some random YouTuber. It's not my game. I don't want to take away from your vision, especially if you have a combat feature that you want to show off later. That said, if anyone else is interested in AIKODE and its development, I urge you to wishlist this game and follow this game on Twitter. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll see you in the next one. Hey, if you want to go down that indie game rabbit hole, consider clicking that playlist. Trust me, it'll be worth your while.